What if the most sacred name you speak is the one you whisper all day without noticing I am? When Jesus said, I am the way, was he pointing to a path outside you, or unveiling a presence already within you, nearer than breath, closer than thought? Pause with me. Beneath the noise of personality, effort, and fear, there is a stillness where I am is not a label but a living doorway. In that quiet, the anxious self loosens, the striving slows, and a deeper life begins to move your words, your choices, your love. He did not hand us a map to follow later. He revealed a life to awaken now. Not the worship of a distant figure, but the recognition of a divine identity shining at the core of your own being. And when you stop fastening anything to I am, no titles, no limits, you discover why that simple name opens what no effort can. Stay with me, because in a moment I'll show you the one gentle shift that turns I am from a phrase you say into a presence you live, and the surprising mistake that keeps most people from ever finding the door. That gentle shift begins with seeing that I am is prior to every story, every role, every success or failure. Notice how quickly the mind rushes to complete the sentence, I am tired, I am busy, I am not enough, I am enlightened. Each predicate fastens the infinite to a label, and a label is a doorway into the small, defended self. But before those labels arrive, there is a simple, living sense of being, quiet, open, aware. That is the I am as presence. It is not personal. It is the light by which the personal is seen. You do not create this presence. You relax the claim upon it. The ego is a collecting of identifications, a college of past images and future concerns. Forever negotiating its worth, presence needs no negotiation, it simply is. Sit for a moment and sense the fact that you are. Without adding anything, no history, no title, no opinion. Feel the aliveness that remains. That unadorned beingness is the doorway Jesus referenced. The way that is not a path through time, but an unveiling of what has always been here. When you abide as I am, you do not inflate the person, you unfasten it. The personal self becomes like a useful garment, worn when needed, set aside when not. Reactions soften, space appears between stimulus and response. Love, not as sentiment but as effortless regard, begins to act of itself. This is why the mystics emphasize stillness, not as an escape from life, but as the place from which life moves authentically through you. Language cannot catch this fully. If you repeat the words, I am, as a mental exercise, you stay at the surface. Let the words point you back to the wordless presence that hears them. Ask, gently, who is aware of this breath? Who notices this thought? Do not hurry for an answer. Rest in the noticing itself. The one who notices is not an object, it is the luminous field in which objects arise. Recognize that, and the sentence of your life no longer needs a predicate to be complete. Beware of the subtle theft by which the ego claims realization. I am the presence. I have attained. Presence does not belong to you, you belong in it. The proof is humility, reverence, the ease with which you allow others to be. There is nothing to defend in simple being. Even suffering changes tone. It is received, held, and gradually transfigured in the quiet radiance at the center. As this recognition stabilizes, prayer turns from asking to consenting, from striving to yielding. Guidance becomes less about signs and more about a deep inward yes. Decisions are made from stillness, action rides the current of clarity, and silence becomes a companion rather than a gap to be filled in ordinary moments. Test this. While washing dishes, notice the simple sense of being before the swirl of critique. During a difficult conversation, feel the spacious I am that hears the rising emotion without collapsing into it. Let breath anchor you, let attention soften into the chest, and witness how clarity arrives unforced. The way is not sensational, it is quietly luminous, available in traffic, in grief, in laughter. In the long silence of the night, faithful as your own breath and heartbeat. Faithful as your own breath and heartbeat. So when we speak of the way, we are not pointing to a road out there, but to the ground beneath your very feet. Pilgrimages, teachers, scriptures, communities. These are blessed signs, but no sign is the destination. Their holy task is to turn you back to the place you're already standing, to the center that does not move when your circumstances do. You can change countries, careers, and companions and still miss what is nearer than thought. The way is not something you acquire, it is something you uncover. A simplicity that appears when the noise of seeking quiets enough for you to recognize the light that has been quietly watching all the seeking. Within is not a location inside the body, it is the depth dimension of awareness itself, a centerless center from which sight becomes clear. The temple is consciousness. Enter it by attention. Rest your notice in the quiet of the heart, and you will begin to sense guidance not as a dramatic sign. What is a rightness, a subtle alignment, like the way a key turns when you have found the proper angle. Outward forms stop being ladders to climb and become windows that let the inner light stream through. The ego treats spirituality as an itinerary, collect practices, master techniques, display results. Presence treats it as consent, allow, soften, listen. In prayer, shift from asking to get to consenting to be. In meditation, release the hunt for experiences and return to this unadorned being. Then the world outside ceases to be a battlefield or a marketplace of answers. It becomes a mirror and a classroom. Relationships reveal where you still contract. Challenges reveal where you still outsource your peace. Each event points you inward to the steady witness that can embrace it. This does not dismiss the outer, it transfigures it. You still read, learn, serve, sing, but you do so as one who has found the well, not as one dying of thirst. You test everything by inner resonance. Does this teaching deepen humility, peace, and love? Does this practice open compassion rather than inflate comparison? If a form feeds anxiety or spiritual performance, set it down gently. If a form awakens stillness and kind action, keep it. This is how the way within navigates the world without, not by contempt for forms, but by discerning their rightful place. In storms, the inner sanctuary proves itself. Grief arises, you let it move in the vast room of awareness instead of building a new identity around it. Anger flares, you feel its heat without letting it steer your tongue. Joy returns, you welcome it without clutching. The way within does not bypass life, it blesses it by holding everything in a love that does not wobble with the weather. Ordinary moments shine with quiet significance. Washing a cup, tying a shoe, answering an email, all become doors back to the center. To embody this, practice small fidelities, pause before speaking, feel the soles of your feet. Soften the belly, place attention in the heart, breathe, then listen. Replace "what should I do" with "from where am I seeing?" If it is fear, step back. If it is stillness, proceed. Notice how compassion arises on its own when you abide as awareness, how the sense of me over here, them over there, loosens, how service becomes the overflow of inward sufficiency rather than a project for self-worth. And from here the labels we fasten to I am begin to fall away, not by force, but by simple seeing. The moment you add a predicate to I am, you carve the whole into parts. I am this, therefore not that. Identity becomes a fence, and the heart learns to defend its side of the field. When the predicate drops, the fence drops, and what remains is a spacious belonging that does not need an opposite to know itself. I am, without an attachment, is like open sky. Clouds pass, storms visit, yet the sky is not defined by any weather. Notice how language recruits you into separation. I am angry fuses your being with a passing state. Anger is present, acknowledges weather without confusing it for the sky. I am a success, I am a failure. Both are masks the ego alternates like costumes. Try this when a label arises. Shift from identification to observation. Let the label be true as an appearance and untrue as an identity. In that gentle disidentification, the tight knot of versus you, mine versus yours, begins to loosen. Without labels, compassion stops being a moral project and becomes a natural expression of undivided seeing. You no longer meet a difficult person. You meet pain, fear, conditioning moving through a human form, just as it moves through you at other times. Judgments quiet not because you have silenced them by force, but because the sense of a separate judge loses its foundation. The boundary between my life and life thins. You feel the same breath animating each face you encounter. This does not erase your human uniqueness, it releases it. Roles become functional rather than existential. You can be a parent, nurse, artist, neighbor, fully, skillfully, lovingly, without shrinking being to a job title. When the role is needed, you step in. When the moment changes, you step out. No residue, no performance anxiety, just availability. The body, the mind, the story continue, but as instruments of service rather than fortresses of identity. The paradox is that dropping labels makes you more responsive, not less. Because you are not defending an image, you can hear feedback without collapse, change course without shame, apologize without self-attack. The energy previously spent on maintaining who I am becomes free for presence, creativity, and love. This freedom is not indifference. Nothing stands between awareness and what is here. Practice this in small, repeatable ways before finishing an I am sentence. Pause for 3 breaths. Feel the silent being that is complete without the predicate. If words are still needed, choose them lightly. Rephrase inner speech. Replace I am anxious with anxiety is visiting. Replace I am unworthy with the thought of unworthiness is arising. Notice the immediate softening in the body. At day's end, remove your name tags. Say inwardly, not my job, not my age, not my opinions, not my wins or losses. What remains? Rest there for a minute. What in conflict? Silently ask, who would I be here without the label I've given myself or them? Feel how options open. The more you stand as label-free awareness, the more the world's labels lose their power to divide. Nationality, ideology, even spiritual identities become transparent, useful for communication, harmless when held lightly. You discover that love is not a sentiment directed from a separate me toward a separate you, but the natural radiance of undivided being recognizing itself in every form. Even your own inner parts, fearful child, stern critic, curious seeker, are welcomed as movements within the same vastness, reconciled not by argument but by inclusion. And in the quiet that follows, action arises from wholeness rather than from the reflex to prove, defend, or become. From that wholeness, the scriptural phrase, Christ in you, ceases to be poetry and becomes recognition. It is not the personal ego promoted to divinity. It is the radiant life that Jesus revealed as the very ground of being. I am names this impersonal presence, the one light appearing as many persons without being confined by any. When this dawns, you no longer try to borrow holiness from a figure in history. You discover the same presence that animated him moving silently at the core of your awareness, willing to think, speak, and act as you without becoming limited to your story. This is not a title to claim, but a transparency to allow. The person becomes a window, the light is the content. Hence the Apostles' confession, not I, but Christ liveth in me. You notice a shift from performing spirituality to yielding to grace. Love acts with a quiet authority that does not argue. Peace abides not because circumstances are ideal, but because being is unopposed at the center. Wisdom arrives as a calm rightness rather than as mental strain. The hallmark is humility. The more clearly Christ is recognized within, the less there is to defend, impress, or compare. Understanding Jesus' way, shower frees you from both hero worship and self-exaltation. He revealed a universal sonship, the divine lineage of all who awaken to the I am. The Father within doth the works, becomes a living posture. You consent, and the work works through you. Prayer matures into communion rather than petition. Meditation becomes resting as the one who is already whole. The vine and branches are no longer metaphor. You feel yourself nourished from within by a quiet sap, and your fruit is simply what love produces when obstruction eases. Patience where you used to rush, Forgiveness where you used to retaliate, clarity where you used to complicate. This inner Christ is profoundly practical. In conflict, you pause and let the heart remember only love sees clearly. Breath by breath, you relax the reflex to fix, to win, to be right, and ask inwardly, what would love say here if I were not afraid? Often it says less than you think. Sometimes it says nothing and listens until the other's pain has been heard. Sometimes it speaks one clean sentence and the atmosphere changes. In grief, Christ within does not bypass sorrow. It holds it in a tenderness that refuses to label it enemy. In work, it organizes your day without the whip of anxiety, placing first things first with surprising ease. Guard this recognition from spiritual vanity. To say, Christ is my identity, is not to decorate the ego with sacred language. It is to let the ego grow quiet enough that goodness can flow without commentary. The tests are simple. Are you becoming kinder to the hardest person in your life? Does silence feel like a friend? Do you apologize more quickly and forgive more thoroughly? Do you see the light in those your mind was trained to dismiss? When you serve, the least of these, you sense you are meeting your own self in a different costume, and generosity stops feeling like loss because nothing real can be taken from what you are, which is why the anxious grip of self-effort can finally unclench. Surrender is not quitting, it is consenting. It is the quiet inner yes to the presence that already knows how to move, speak, and arrange what the mind strains to manage. Self-effort tries to seize outcomes, surrendered awareness attends to source. Self-effort asks, how can I make this happen? Surrender asks, from where is this to be done? When the center is presence, work becomes flow, words become cleaner, choices become simpler, and fatigue lessens because you are no longer dragging a self through every task. Jesus framed it plainly. I can of mine own self do nothing. That is not weakness, it is wisdom. The personal doer is a tense knot of past and future, pushing and resisting. Surrender softens that knot into availability. You show up alert and at ease, and let the intelligence of love do the heavy lifting. You still make the call, write the proposal, care for the child, but beneath the action is a felt sense of being carried. Timing improves. You miss fewer cues. You apologize sooner. You feel guided rather than driven. Beware the caricature that surrender means passivity. It does not mean waiting on the couch for miracles. It means moving from willingness rather than willfulness. When awareness is surrendered, action grows precise and often bold, yet free of strain. You can say no without hardness, yes without people-pleasing. You can hold boundaries without making enemies. Pressure no longer hijacks your values because you trust the inner pacing more than the outer clock. The fruit is effectiveness with gentleness, clarity without harshness. Practically cultivate micro surrenders throughout the day. Before beginning a task, pause one breath and inwardly consent, Father within, do the work through me. When urgency spikes, relax the belly, soften the shoulders, and feel the heart area. Do not move until the body's tension lessens by 10%. Ask one guiding question, what would love have me do next? Do only that next clear thing. If confusion persists, step away briefly. Walk, wash a cup, feel the soles of your feet. Then return from stillness in the day by releasing results. I give back everything I tried to carry. Let only what is true remain. Watch how grace organizes what anxiety scatters. Emails find their tone. Difficult conversations land in the right hour. Creative answers appear in the shower or on a quiet drive, because you are not browbeating the mind for solutions, you are listening. Even when outcomes are not what you hoped, you notice less inner violence. Disappointment is met, felt, and folded into trust. This is the alchemy of surrender. It converts reactivity into responsiveness, and the need to control into a willingness to be led. You can test the difference by its aftertaste. Self-effort leaves contraction, a subtle residue of self-importance or depletion. Surrendered awareness leaves spaciousness, gratitude, and a sense that the work somehow did itself through your willing hands. Over time, this becomes your default posture, a felt alignment where prayer and action are not two things, where silence accompanies speech, where guidance whispers in the body before the mind can explain. The me that used to claim credit and hoard blame grows quieter, and the inner Christ becomes the recognizable door, the one who thinks, speaks, and acts as you without strain, so that patience no longer feels like something you manufacture, it flows as naturally as breath. To live the name is to let love be the intelligence of your thinking, the cadence of your speaking, the motive force of your actions. You begin to notice the difference between thoughts that are engineered by fear and thoughts that arrive as quiet clarity. Fear thoughts race, demand, dramatize. Love thoughts are simple, lucid, nourishing. They leave an aftertaste of peace. When a choice appears, you feel for that signature. If peace is present, proceed. If agitation fuels it, pause. This is not indecision, it is fidelity to the inner governor whose government is order and grace in speech. Love takes the tongue by the hand. Words slow down, the need to prove diminishes. Listening ripens. You speak to connect rather than to conquer. Corrections become invitations instead of indictments. Even silence becomes a saying, a way of letting the other know they are safe in your presence. You discover that fewer words carry more light. Before speaking, a small inward check arises. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it timely? If any answer wavers, you wait, and waiting turns out to be an act of mercy in action. Love is practical. It picks up the phone when reconciliation is needed. It sends the text that acknowledges responsibility. It washes the dish no one sees. It sets a boundary without malice. It notices the person on the margins and makes room. Because the door is love, you are not acting to secure identity. You are expressing what you already are. Outcomes still matter, but they no longer define your worth, which frees your hands to work cleanly. Service stops being a strategy. It becomes an overflow. This way of living is trained in small, repeatable gestures. Begin the day by consenting. I am is my life. Let love think, speak, and act as me today. When judgment arises, feel it in the body and breathe until its heat cools by a few degrees before you decide or reply. In conversation, listen for the hurt beneath the words. Address the hurt, not the performance. Replace subtle self-promotion with quiet usefulness. Do the next needed thing without announcing it. Let gratitude interrupt complaint. Or name 3 gifts hidden in the moment you're tempted to resist. When tempted to hurry, ask, what am I afraid will happen if I slow down? Offer that fear into the heart and move at the speed of clarity thought. Life shifts from replaying grievances to blessing. You start to catch the first spark of resentment and refuse to breathe on it. Instead, you place the situation in the light of I am and ask for right seeing. Often, what changes first is not the circumstance but your interpretation, and with it, your options multiply. Creative solutions appear that were invisible from the narrow corridor of self-protection. You notice that love thinks more intelligently than fear, not less. It includes more variables, honors more realities, wastes less energy. Living the name also purifies desire. You still want, but the wanting is aligned, less grasping. More yearning for what blesses the whole. You can set holy ambitions without becoming brittle. You can receive delay without despair because you trust the timing of the one moving you. When success comes, humility keeps it from owning you. When failure visits, dignity keeps you from shrinking. The axis is love, and love stabilizes the seasons in community. The name expresses as mutual upbuilding. You stop using people as mirrors for ego and begin seeing them as fellow bearers of light. Encouragement replaces comparison. You celebrate others' gifts without feeling diminished, and you offer your own without apology. Confession and forgiveness become normal, not dramatic events, but the hygiene of the heart, so the channel stays clear and the current of grace keeps moving through the ordinary hours, through errands and emails, through laughter and tears, through the midnight watch and the first light of morning.